So John, a question that we wanted to address here was just kind of the general placement of a switch, as far as when you're walking in and you are observing a child, whether they're in a seating system or not, and you're looking at the movements that are natural and frequent for them, and you're trying to think about whether it's mobility or communication device. What are your thoughts just on where to start looking for switch placement?
Well, I usually start by, of course, considering the hand, because the hand is a great manipulator. Although we have to not assume that it's a great manipulator for everyone. So if they seem to have good dexterity, fine motor skills, then we definitely start with the hand, because the joystick is a very effective way of driving, and of course it's a very effective way of using a AAC device.
Mm-hmm.
But the head array is quite useful and a powerful tool because it's very intuitive for our kids who don't quite have that dexterity. A lot of people want to focus on the hand, but I try not to do that. There's also a debate, this often turns into a debate, about where should we be using tone patterns that exist and somewhat maybe aren't the best patterns to sort of encourage.
Right.
So these things all depend not just on the child, but also on your therapeutic philosophy.
Right.
It sort of goes back and forth between, well, do you want to make this as adapted to the kid as possible, or do you want to try and teach them a better motor pattern? Because some people think that you can do that.
There's quite a divergence in those two pathways.
They're two completely different. I mean, if you're an occupational therapist, then you know it's the difference between a rehabilitative frame of reference and a biomechanical frame of reference.
Right.
So there's the two ways of going about it. But a head array is quite special because the head generally is a pretty stable part of the body. So you're not dealing with the long kinematic chain of what ends up distally at the end of the hand.
Right.
The head is a very stable, it typically is a stable part of the body. And it's very intuitive in that if I want to go to the right, I look to the right, and that switch is there, and you activate that switch.
Right.
You don't have to have this whole complex cognitive process of what do I need to do with my hand to get me to get there. It becomes much more intuitive when you try a head array. So if they don't seem to have good dexterity enough to use a joystick, this is probably one of the places I start, and then I actually move from here often down to the hands, using switches and things like that.
And I know that this power mobility is what you do. Would you have any thoughts on that same process when we're looking at interfacing with a computer or a communication device, as far as you mentioned that their head is intuitive because they look to the right if they want to go to the right.
For mobility, right. I don't know that I can say the same thing for communication. I don't have that much experience in it. Just more of the fact that it tends to be a very more stable part of the body. And again, you're not dealing with this long kinematic chain.
Right.
I think trying to stay away from the long kinematic chain is what's important.
Well, what about things of the long? So what if we decide we want to put a switch maybe at their, like if I want to put a switch by your elbow, so that you can go sideways. How does that change it as far as that kinematic chain you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean that could be better for some kids because it's closer to the body, it's more proximal and less complex kinematic chain. But I think what's really important is that everyone, the team, because usually there's a team associated with this stuff.
Right.
It's that everyone agrees to go in with an open mind and willing to try different things, and not just go with some concept that using the hand is always best because it's the most manipulative part of the body. Sometimes it just doesn't work that way, and sometimes these kids surprise us. I've got guys who try with a hand for a long time, and then they're driving with their knee, or some kids who drive with their feet. Kind of have to experiment, and then there's this fine balance between changing it up too much and not really giving a kid time to work on something, and sticking too much to one thing and not giving them the opportunity to try different things. So there is always this balance that we really need to learn to navigate, but I think everyone has to learn to have an open mind.